Greetings, everybody. This is Dr. Meredith, and I welcome you to our Dance Nutrition 101 session. So, I am so glad, even though I can't actually see you, that we have this opportunity for a virtual session. If you have ideas and things that you have questions about afterwards, I'll share some contact information so you can reach out. And the first thing, if I was with you in person, I would ask, what kinds of nutrition questions do you have? But because we're not together and we're not in real time, I'm going to share some concepts and ideas based off the most common things I hear from dancers and the most common questions I get from dancers. So, quick background if you haven't yet watched some of my other sessions that I have shared. I am a performer myself. I like to think of myself as the five P's. I am a physical therapist. I was in Minnesota working for 15 years before I moved out of state. I'm a Pilates instructor, personal trainer, yoga instructor. I'm a PBT, Progressing Ballet Technique certified instructor. I am still performing myself. I have been performing for decades and decades and decades. I was a dance minor in college, performed professionally, still doing a little bit on the side. And I retired from any clinical or patient care, and now I am a professor teaching physical therapist assistant students. So if you want to know about any of those professional things or think about your own career trajectory, feel free to reach out. You don't have to be one thing. You can be multiple things to multiple people, depending on the kind of training that you pursue. But tonight's topic is nutrition, so let's get there. First thing I want you to do, grab a piece of paper, grab a pen. I want you to draw 3 circles. And if you really don't have anything to draw with, you're going to have to draw them in your head. So the first circle represents breakfast. The second circle is lunch. And the third circle is dinner. And now what I want you to do is just draw a typical everyday meal on your breakfast, lunch, and dinner plates. And it might be a bowl. You're like, wait a minute, I have cereal. That's fine. If you don't draw, just write words and try to make the words equal to the portion size. So if half your plate has fruit on it, write fruit and take up half your plate. I'll give you a second just to work on this. And we're going to save these plates. We're going to come back to them in about 20 minutes. If you're not quite done, that's okay. Just keep on going. I'm going to share a little bit more information as you keep going. So, nutritionology. What am I talking about? So, a lot of ballet dancers seem to want leaner physiques. And I'm not saying that being lean is a prerequisite for being a dancer or being a good dancer. That is completely not true. I am simply generalizing this to something that I hear a lot. And dancers ask me a lot of questions about what kinds of diets are best for lean physiques. And I'm getting a lot of people asking about some of the things on popular media. So they're saying, well, what about this keto diet? And keto is heavily based in a lot of proteins and fats and not so much in carbs. So it really minimizes our carbohydrate. And then you get gluten-free diets, which means that anything that has gluten in it, so typically your wheat products, you don't eat those. And then you just have general low-carb diets, which keto is a very specific thing. It's a kind of low-carb diet, but you can also just have a general low-carb diet that isn't quite a keto diet. Then you have a vegetarian diet. So there's different kinds of vegetarians too. Like some eat eggs, some eat fish, some don't eat eggs, some don't eat fish, some eat dairy, some don't eat dairy. And then a new popular one that's come to rise is intermittent fasting, where you only eat between certain hours. And a lot of people are like, is this one best? Is this one best? Which one's going to make me lean? Which one's going to make me a better dancer? The reality is that whatever gives you enough energy aligns to your beliefs, aligns to your cultural values, and accounts for any food allergies you might have is great as long as it is sustainable, meaning something you could do for a very, very long period of time, years on end, without feeling shaky or brain fog or losing energy or losing muscle mass. And as long as it doesn't create any imbalances in your routine blood work that gets done from your primary care physician. And the truth here is that everything works for some people. But if you're taking out an entire food group, if you're eating the same thing every single day, if you're having energy crashes, you can't quite get through practice, you're feeling weak, your stamina's going down, you're losing muscle mass, you're practicing something that isn't sustainable. And you're going to have to take a different approach. Now, for most dancers, eating whole foods in line with the idea of macros or food groups is actually providing the best balance for the most part. Now, if you have food allergies, please work around them. If you can't have gluten because you're a celiac, please don't eat gluten. Okay, but I'm just generalizing here a little bit. So, macros, what are these macros I speak of? There's only 3 of them. Macronutrients are basically the nutrients that actually give your body energy. There's only 3 of them: carbs, proteins, and fats. You might say, wait a minute, what about fruits and veggies? Where are those supposed to go? Those are actually carbohydrates, believe it or not. And you might be looking at this saying, yeah, I know this. We covered this in health class a million times. That's great. Stick with me. We're going to look at these macros in a little bit different kind of way. So on your paper, I want you to write down the word carbs. And on the left side, myth, and on the right side, fact. Actually, multiple facts. I'm going to go over some myths about carbs and some facts about carbs. And when I say facts, I mean things that science and physiology, which is how our body works, have told us to be true about a human body and how a human body actually works. So the biggest myth I hear about carbs is people say, I don't want to eat carbs, they're going to increase body fat. That's what I hear out there. Now, the truth is that any calorie in excess is going to be stored as body fat. That's just how our body works. That's science. It doesn't matter if it's protein powder, it doesn't matter if you eat 50 bags of veggies a day, or it doesn't matter if it's carbs. They all have the potential to be stored as fat if there are too many based off of your activity level and your resting metabolic rate. Next thing, glucose, like sugar, spikes insulin. And insulin makes it easier for fat cells to absorb nutrients. So what happens then is that this excess glucose is converted to body fat. So if you say, wow, I love cupcakes, simple sugars, and I'm going to eat cupcakes for every meal, you're going to be on a very spike and crash roller coaster. You're going to be like, wow, I'm so energized. And 2 hours later, you're looking for a gallon of ice cream. You're like, oh, I need more of that to get through my day. And you're just going to be like this big roller coaster running throughout the day. So that's not necessarily ideal for dance. And the reality is that people that try to stay on low carb diets in general, like they try to minimize their fruits, they try to minimize pastas, breads, things like that, they usually have trouble sustaining a low carb diet. Your brain, it relies on glucose to function. It cannot function without glucose. So when I see dancers attempt low carb diets for prolonged periods, I see people that are having trouble recovering. I see people that are having a lack of stamina. I see people having brain fog. I see people that have to go home and take a nap for 3 hours after practice. And the reason why is because carbohydrate is your body's preferred source of energy. And it literally turns that glucose, that carbohydrate, into your body's energy. It's called ATP, if you've ever heard of that. And it's pretty efficient at that. But not all carbs are created equal. You have simple and you have complex. Simple carbs are things like sugar, like table sugar. You find it in candy, you find it in soda, and yes, even sugar substitutes. So if you're like, well, I eat honey, or I eat maple syrup, or I eat Splenda or Truvia, it counts. Those things don't add a lot of nutrition value. So you go on this big spiky roller coaster of ups and downs, and then your cravings, and it is really, really hard to get off that roller coaster and function well as a dancer if you're trying to function on sugars. Not ideal for dance most of the time. Now, if you're thinking, well, I have these jelly beans, I just love jelly beans, can't I ever have them? Of course. They have a magic time and a place for dance performance, and I'll show you where that is in a little bit. Now, complex carbs, these have fiber in them. This is good because if you don't have fiber, your digestive system is not going to work well. So you might get constipation or bloating or gas if you're not getting enough fiber. Same if you're getting too much, but I usually don't see that happen. So where do you get these complex carbs from? Whole grain bread, whole wheat pasta, brown rice, beans, potatoes. For this purpose, I'm going to put fruits in here, and especially things that have skins on them, like a plum or berries are really great, and most veggies. And for the most part, these things aren't going to spike your insulin as much as those simple candy-like sugars. And so you're not going to get that steep, like, I have energy and now I crash and now I need a pint of ice cream to get me back working again. And since they have fiber, it's going to keep your digestive system regular. And another big bonus that a lot of people just don't know, if you're going to the doctor and you see that your cholesterol is super high and you're like, I don't know why my cholesterol's high, this doesn't make sense. A lot of times I'm seeing this in dancers that don't have enough complex carbs in their body. They're not taking in enough because complex carbs actually decrease how your body absorbs and uses the cholesterol in a good way. So if your cholesterol is super high and it doesn't really make sense, I'm going to ask if you have enough complex carbs in your diet. Now, same thing for fats. We write fats on our paper and we write myth and fact. So, myth. I've heard this over and over again. Eating fat adds body fat. We'll go back to the truth here. Any calorie in excess will be stored by fat. That is how the body works. Remember, it doesn't matter if it's protein powder. It doesn't matter if it's vegetables. It doesn't matter if it's carbs. It doesn't matter if it comes from fat. Now, fat, it is the most dense energy source. It has 9 calories per gram versus carbs and proteins at 4 calories per gram. So think about it this way. A teaspoon of peanut butter probably has the same amount of calories as half a bag of broccoli. So it's not bad to have one versus the other. It's not bad to have both. But I'm not going to suggest that you attempt to eat the entire jar of peanut butter because that's going to be a lot of calories in one sitting versus half a bag of broccoli. That's important. It contributes to something called satiety. So if you had, let's say you had rice and chicken for lunch, but there wasn't any olive oil or peanut butter or avocado or whatever your favorite fat source is with it, you're going to be hungry again in an hour. So if you're trying to slow down digestion and prolong how long your body can make a fuel useful to you as a performer, you're going to have to include a little bit of healthy fats with preferably most meals. And not all fats are created equal. So there's actually saturated and unsaturated, and that's broken down into a million more kinds, and you don't need to know all the details right now. But saturated fats are going to be things that are solid at room temperature, like meats, cheeses. And I'm not saying that they're bad, but that's not supposed to be the majority of our diet. That's supposed to be less of our diet on a daily basis. The unsaturated fats, those are usually liquid at room temperature. So think of things like olive oil, or there's a couple of special ones that actually look solid at room temperature that you might not even know about. If you've ever heard of chia seed, if you've ever heard of flaxseed, if you've ever heard of fish oil pills, they look solid at room temperature. But those have special things in them called omega 3s. Omega 3s are like these magic fats. And the reason why is because, yes, they contribute to the fat that helps keep you full and helps your body functioning well and helps prolong how long it takes to digest the food so it lasts longer. But these magic omega 3s, they contribute to your heart health and they also contribute to anti inflammatory properties. You guys are working hard. Your muscles break down, your tendons break down, your joints break down. Everything breaks down when you work hard day after day. So, if you can include some omega 3s in your diet, it helps your body recover faster. And you might say, well, you're kind of talking about things that you sprinkle on things. Like you put chia seed on yogurt, you put flaxseed on oatmeal. Yes, you definitely can put them on things and in things. And the reason I'm not mentioning a lot of whole food sources is because a lot of dancers simply just don't eat the things that are naturally high in omega 3. So if you like fatty fish like salmon, great, please eat it. If you like walnuts, great, please eat it. But there's not a ton of foods that have omega 3, which is why a lot of times we look for those things that you can sprinkle on or in something. But you do have to have fats for your body to recover properly and to make sure that you're not just going on that energy spike and crash situation where you're always hungry and having trouble focusing and getting through class. Now we're going to do proteins. Proteins, same thing. We're going to make a myth and fact sheet. So, myth. On this one, the thing that I hear the most is that eating protein will make you lean and increase your metabolic rate. Okay, there's a little bit of truth here in that eating protein, the body has trouble breaking protein down. So it increases what's called the thermic effect of food, which can increase your resting metabolic rate by about up to 10%. So eating a little bit more protein or eating some protein with every meal could be beneficial to you. But some more facts. Any calorie in excess can be stored as fat. Okay, so if you only eat chicken, steak, fish, and protein powder, and eggs and cheese, it isn't going to make you a lean human. Okay, you have to have balance across everything. Now, something else to think about. Protein helps increase how full you feel. So we actually suggest that you have at least a little bit of protein every meal. Little drawback though. I know that Instagram and social media out there has made all kinds of interesting protein desserts by mixing things like yogurt with protein powder. Okay, it has a time, it has a place, it could be really yummy. But the body can only process about 30 grams of protein every 2 hours. So if you're thinking, oh, this fancy recipe that I just found on social media for 50 grams of protein is going to be amazing, it's probably going to make your stomach hurt and give you indigestion. So you can't really load it up at one meal. You need to spread it throughout the day. The other drawback of protein, if you're thinking, oh, this high protein diet is magic, if you keep it up over time, it creates a little bit of an acidic environment in the body. And if the body is always exposed to an acidic environment inside, it compromises your bone health. So you could actually become more susceptible to fractures and long-term problems like you've probably heard of osteoporosis, where your bone thins out over time. So having this high protein diet with low carbs, it can have consequences that you maybe haven't yet considered. Now, proteins, they're not all equal either. There's complete proteins, meaning they have all their amino acids, they have all their components. Those are things like meats, chickens, fishes, basically animal or fish sources, or eggs. There's soy for vegetarians out there. And there's also this plant thing. And if you're not familiar, look it up. It's called quinoa. It's a really yummy grain, kind of like rice almost, and it's actually a complete protein. And you might say, well, wait, I'm vegetarian. I can't eat those things. Okay, fair. You need to do complementary proteins where you complement proteins that have different kinds of amino acids in the same meal. So, for example, when we hear eat rice with beans, that's what we mean. Or eat dairy with grains, like have a piece of bread or peanut butter sandwich with a glass of milk. So, you need to combine your rice and your grains or legumes. And you also, I said that kind of funny, didn't I? You need to combine your rice with your beans or legumes, and you need to combine your like your whole wheat sources, your grain sources with a dairy source. So it's like a cross match of complementary proteins in each meal to make sure you're getting the kinds of proteins you need. Because if you're missing amino acids, which are the building blocks of protein, your body's not going to function at its best, especially if you're missing them over time. You can get some health issues from that. So now that we've looked at some mythology and factology, let's pull out your meal plates. And you might say, well, what's my plate supposed to look like? Like this. Okay. So you see that this plate is half fruits and veggies. It has a quarter some kind of a grain on it, and as a quarter some kind of a protein. And the egg yolk happens to represent a little bit of fat. So there's a little bit of healthy fat with each meal. This is a very ideal plate. And you might say, well, the idea of veggies for breakfast makes me turn green and want to vomit. Okay, fair. I hear you. I feel the same way. Okay, put them somewhere else. So if you don't eat your veggies for breakfast, eat them for your morning snack. Okay, that's where snacks can come from. Is you could say, okay, what am I not getting in my meals, and where could I put them? I could put them in my snack breaks. So think about what you do eat and what you don't eat, and simply make space to balance it out throughout the day. And in terms of fruits and veggies, we don't always want to do the same thing. So try to get at least, if not more, 5 servings of fruits and veggies spread throughout your day. And we have a phrase called eat the rainbow, which means that in each day or every 2 days or at least every week, try to eat something of each color. So for example, red, you have red apples, you have cherries, you have strawberries, you have raspberries. Orange, you have oranges, you have sweet potatoes, you have apricots, you have peaches. It doesn't have to be in the natural form. It might be in the freeze-dried form. So you can throw it in your dance bag and have it for a snack. Okay. Then we get to yellow. You have bananas, you have lemons. You could even make lemonade out of them. My secret recipe for lemonade, by the way, write this one down. You might like it. If you like things like Gatorade, you'll probably like this. So I take a tablespoon of lemon juice, a tablespoon of lime juice from those little squeezy plastic bottles I buy at the grocery store. And then I take a teaspoon of anything. It could be, I use Splenda. It's not super healthy for you, but I'm not saying you can't have treats. Okay, so sure, I throw in a packet of Splenda or a teaspoon of Splenda, and I throw in a quarter teaspoon of sea salt, not iodized salt, you'll get sick. So sea salt. I mix it up with about 32 ounces of water. So good. It's like this knockoff Gatorade that's actually much healthier for you than Gatorade. Okay, so that was yellow that we just talked about. You can have yellow peppers. You could have yellow, like zucchini squash, summer squash. We've gone red, orange, yellow. Now I go to green. Well, there's lots of green stuff out there. Green beans, any kind of salads, kale, spinach, collard greens, cabbage. So many greens out there. We've done red, orange, yellow, green. Now we have blue. We have blueberries. It's hard to find blue stuff. Sometimes we count the blackberries in there. And sometimes we just count blue and purple together because it's so hard to find stuff. So you have your eggplants. You have different options like purple sweet potatoes that you can find some seasons of the year. Sometimes you can find purple broccolis. So you can have a little fun finding some of those darker berries, eggplant. Just go look through the grocery store and be like, what fits this color? and try to get something of that color. Raisins actually fit in there, purple grapes. Now we've talked about the rainbow, we've talked about your plates. Let's look at some specific timing here. So we talked about breakfast, lunch, and dinner, what that should look like. What about before class? What should you eat before class when you're really hungry? Because you maybe had lunch at 11 and now you finish school and now you start class and then you start practice and you're like, wow, I'm starving. I didn't have time to eat. The best advice I can give you is get a little cooler and some ice that fits in your locker or backpack to take with you. So, what do you eat before class? Any kind of a carbohydrate that isn't high in sugars. So, crackers, pretzels, even Cheerios aren't that high in sugar. Okay. But since that doesn't have any protein, you probably want to pair it with a protein. So, things like cottage cheese, yogurt, maybe you like string cheese, mozzarella cheeses. The reason I'm not mentioning other cheeses is because the others tend to be higher in saturated fats versus things like cottage cheese, yogurts, mozzarellas tend to be lower in the fats. And we don't want to load up on fat before class. There's a time and a place for it, but a lot before class might make it really hard to digest things well. You could also have hard boiled eggs in your bag, as long as it's a cooler bag, and fruits. But try to get a protein together with a carbohydrate. You could have veggies in there, like if you like celery sticks with some cream cheese on them, with some little raisins. That would be great. But try not to go for the super high sugar. Like, don't have a donut before class. And don't go for the super high fat. Like fried chicken before class, that's probably not going to be the easiest to digest. And of course, if you have food allergies, please work around them. Now, what about if you're in class all day or rehearsal all day? What are you supposed to do to keep your energy up? A lot of dancers drink juice or they drink Gatorade. And you know what? That's fine. Okay. Now, should I guzzle juice and Gatorade on non-dance days? Probably not. Save that for your longer days because it does have a lot of sugar in it. And try to look for things where there aren't added sugars. You're going to have to read the label. Some other things that are great. One of my favorites is grapes and raisins because you can just gobble a bunch super fast without having to take a ton of time away from class. I know that some of my dance teachers love crackers and pretzels. That's great if you like that. I actually like sushi rice. So I have a little cooler and I just keep little bags of sushi rice in there and I chew on that. It's super easy to eat. I like rice cakes too. Can throw them in my bag. So you are going for those higher sugar, easy to digest, fast to eat carbohydrates intermittently throughout the long day to keep you going, at least until your break. Now, no discussion of nutrition is complete without a discussion of hydration. What are you supposed to do with that? Generally, water is best. Okay. There are some guidelines. So before dance, you want to drink 16 ounces of water, which is basically 2 cups, 2 hours prior. So I have a little water bottle here. I would show it to you, but it's not coming through on this virtual background. And I look at the front of it, and it's a little plastic bottle, 500 milliliter from the grocery store. And it actually says 16.9 fluid ounces. So drinking that 2 hours before, perfect. Do you have to guzzle it? No, you can gradually sip it. And then you try to get another 8 to 16 ounces within 1 hour. So you're basically drinking like 2 bottles of water, standard small grocery store size that says 500 milliliters on it. Now, what about during activity? The guidelines are that you drink at least 4 to 6 ounces every 15 to 20 minutes. For dance, that can make you a little sloshy. So you're going to have to adjust it based off of what you personally can do. But think of it this way. An ounce is about a glug. So you just take your bottle and you go glug or sip. Okay. So if you're taking 4 sips every 20 minutes, that's about how much you want to get in, especially if you're dancing super hard. And then afterwards, the guideline actually says 16 to 24 ounces for every pound lost. I don't really want you guys to get into the habit of weighing yourself. It's probably counterproductive, but you need to drink some water, probably about one bottle full again after you're finished for the day. Thirst can't always be your guide, though. Little hint: if you go to the bathroom, you look in the toilet, and you see that the urine is yellow, that's a sign that you're not getting enough water. That's a sign that you're dehydrated. Unless if you are taking a ton of B and C vitamins, your urine is going to be yellow no matter what you do to it. So just something to keep in mind. Now, the other thing I want to talk about that a lot of dancers ask is, okay, I understand what should be on a plate. I understand roughly like what kinds of things are good snacks. But what about if I don't have dance on that day? Okay, that magic opportunity to eat the jelly beans is actually right after you dance. That's when your body can just absorb sugar like magically and make it vanish. And there are reasons for that. I can go into the physiology, but you're probably not that interested. And if you are, you can email me. But we've talked about dance days. What about off days? Off days, the plate looks the same, but it might be just a tiny bit smaller. So let's say you always take a half cup of rice. Maybe you just take a teaspoon less rice on an off day. But with dancers, I don't like to get too much into on and off days because sometimes we see that as a reward. And you're like, oh, I danced today, so I get to eat extra today. If you can just level it out and make it work most days of the week, that's probably going to be the easiest plan and the best for just developing good relationships with nutrition in our bodies. Now, what about the off season? Let's say you're taking 3 months off and you're not going to be very active. Then we do suggest that you actually look at keeping that same plate, but do decrease the portions at least a little bit. And usually we go for decreasing the portion of carbohydrates a little bit. We're not saying take them out. We're just saying maybe take a quarter of them off each plate. And that way it helps maintain a leaner physique. But different things work for different dancers, so you have to see what works for you. The other thing I do want to touch on really quick is, well, two other things actually. I want to touch on supplements because a lot of dancers ask, well, what about protein powder? What about protein bars? What about this? What about that? They have a time, they have a place, they have a purpose. But if your diet is mostly made of supplements and not whole health foods, you're probably going to have some health issues and imbalances at some point. The body is designed to run on food first. And if you try to run on supplements like these yummy protein bars and we have them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you're going to get out of balance and your performance is not going to be as good as it can. And over time, you're going to develop some health issues from that. So I'm not saying don't use them. I'm just saying whole foods first. And if you are somebody that has food allergies and you have to take out entire food groups because of that, I would highly suggest you work with a registered dietitian to develop a unique plan for yourself. Now, I have some homework for you. Probably know I'm always somebody that gives you homework. It's one thing to see information, it's another to use it. First thing, look at your food plates that you drew for yourselves and look at the ideal food plate. For every meal throughout your day, think about how could I make this look like a more ideal food plate? And if you're going to take a whole group off, like I won't eat vegetables for breakfast, it just gives me the heebie-jeebies, then I know that I'm going to have to put that in a snack. Or if I'm super hungry at 10 p.m., I look at what I ate for the day and I say, where was I missing a group? Usually it's veggies. So I know, okay, we're having celery right now because I missed a group of veggies today. So that's your first homework. Look at your ideal plates, and every time you just grab some food, look at it and say, how would it contribute to this plate, even if you split it up over multiple hours? Next thing, I gave you some ideas of snacks. So make a list of 10 snacks that you are willing to eat, preferably healthy ones, before or after class, and rotate through them. And if you need to get a portable cooler and some ice, ask mom or dad to help you get one so you can have the best nutrition possible. Third thing, check the size of your water bottle and practice the nutrition tips I gave you in terms of how much water before, how much water after, how much water throughout the day. There's this thing called a rule of eights. So generally, drink 8 cups of water at 8 points throughout the day. You could try that too. And a lot of you might have questions like, am I eating a balanced diet? Am I getting all the nutrients I need? What should I change to lean out? What should I change to gain muscle? I'm going to give you an assignment. MyFitnessPal is free. Okay. You can just type myfitnesspal.com or download the app on your phone for free. And you can enter data about your specific height, your specific weight, what you eat, how much you eat, your specific activities, your goals, and it will show you compared to average how you're stacking up each day. It'll give you percentages of proteins, carbs, and fats. And let's say that you want to gain muscle and you see that you're always super low on carbs, then it gives you the opportunity to say, oh, which food group am I supposed to add even a quarter cup more once or twice a day to gain some muscle? But you don't really know what to add or subtract until you see your own data tracked for at least 1 week. Now, I don't want you to get fixated on this. Please don't think you have to track all your food all your time. But if you can just do a week to get an idea and then say, okay, is this going where I want it to go or is it not? And am I missing any nutrients? Because it'll give you a breakdown like, do you have enough calcium? Do you have enough fiber? You want to balance that out first before you try to go make this massive change and not really know what you're changing. Because I've heard people say, oh, I want to gain muscle, I'm just going to add protein. What if your diet's already really high in protein? You just don't have enough fats. Bodies like balance. So this gives you a great way to understand what you're putting in and where those opportunities and gaps are compared to an average starting point. Now, if you need something more than that, you're like, this isn't working for me, I'd advise you to reach out to a registered dietitian because they can design specific meal plans for you. So I hope that in our time together, even though it was super short, I have maybe brought a few new ideas and homeworks to light to help you be really great performers. And also, if you're interested in physique, think about like what kind of physique do you want and how does that relate to nutrition too. So I thank you for spending a little bit of time together and take a moment to look at your homework. Pick at least one thing you're willing to do and hopefully share it with your parents since they probably buy food for you. And feel free to reach out with follow-up questions. Email, I won't put it out on the internet, even under an unlisted link, so you'll have to ask your teacher for that one. And Instagram, that's fine, it's already out there in the public. So doc.mmb, D-O-C, little period, dot, and then my initials M and B. You can reach out to Instagram messaging, but please mention where we met so I have some context of this conversation and where we're going. And I wish you a wonderful dance season. Have a great day, everybody.